Welcome everyone to the ProudWorks Masterclass on a founder's guide to building and deploying AI agents, AI co-workers. There's a subtle difference in that, and I think Sanjeev will be, explaining it as we progress. Why he calls it as AI co-workers and not as AI agents. And before we do that, I would like to give a small introduction about ProudWorks. We are a product community and a publication. Internally, we call ourselves as the love letter to the Indian product community. For long, India, we have been known as an IT services hub. The perception has been that the West has always innovated and come up with new products and ideas, whereas India builds it for them as an IT services hub. We want to change that notion and bring out the great product journey stories of Indian founders and Indian companies and establish India as a global product powerhouse. So how we are doing that? We are doing it in 2-3 ways. One is through stories and events such as this. We try to bring in insights from cutting edge and truly innovative product companies like E42 here and leaders like Sanjeev, who have carved a name for themselves, building groundbreaking products from India for the world. So we find out how people like leaders like Sanjeev do it, how they build their product companies, how they scale their product companies, and we publish those insights on the ProudWorks publication. And we also conduct events such as this and masterclasses and workshops to bring these insights out so that every one of us here can be benefited, every one of us here can build better products. This is in short the story about ProudWorks. Next, I would love to, talk a bit more about E42. I will start with a small story. E42, they have been into building AI cognitive agents long before GenAI and OpenAI came into the picture. This is something which is little known. In fact, they are one of the few companies which can claim that they have beaten IBM Watson's team to grab a project from Tata Communications, if I'm not wrong, Sanjeev. So very few companies can lay claim to such a impressive thing, and in a that too in a very early part of their journey. And they have been building AI products right from the time when when you mention AI, you think of Air India and not as artificial intelligence. So they have been at it for a very long time, and they have been doing very innovative stuff. Sanjeev, if you can unmute yourself and explain to the people here about E42, give a brief introduction about yourself and E42, it would be great.
Thank you, Harsha. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me here. And wonderful audience here, and a lot of people who are working in AI, building products, and really glad to be here and honored to be here as well. In terms of my personal journey has been like in engineering and my master's in University of Florida, and I was part of TAFR for a year or so. And then earlier before this AI venture, I was into voice over IP and took an exit after running the company for around 8 years. Again, a product company out of India. So the team has always been. I mean, I feel that I'm in the right crowd here because my team has always been a IP from India, right? In terms of why can't a company grow through IP rather than through people out of India? And then my earlier venture was also in the same lines into voice over IP, which eventually I took an exit by selling the IP to Telstra Australia, and then started with the venture. So, like you rightly said, we started into AI space into 2012, 2013 time frame, and the time was so early in the time where it was AI. People used to mistake it for Air India, of course, at that time. And when we started off, we knew that we had two challenges, right? One, of course, from a IP based company out of India, looking at AI space, we didn't have any specific agenda in terms of what is the product that we are going to create. But one thing that we are very clear on was that the machine comprehension or cognition is going to be the future, because that is the last frontier in a way for the humans, where all of our physical labor that we had to put in at earlier time was taken over in the industrial revolution by machines, and then our cognitive powers is the last frontier, and let us start working on that was the premise, and we set up a small team to start working on machine comprehension and cognition. We were not sure of what was the product that we were going to build at that time, but we definitely knew that we had to overcome two challenges. One is in terms of the training, AI training, how do we get the GPU powers and everything? And the second was how do we aggregate data for large amounts of data? And we started an experiment in India called Pooch at that time, so 2013, which was basically an answering engine where people could ask any question under the sun into a particular number, and we were giving a specific answer, because at that time Google was giving only URLs, and even the info box for Google was not coming up. So our bet was that we will give you a factual answer, we will give you a direct answer rather than links. And literally people started asking anything under the sun, and then we had to scramble, and of course the system couldn't answer most of the queries, and we had to uh, crowdsource a lot of experts online for comma points. So there were a lot of experts who were working on a Stack Overflow model where helping the system curate the answers and send out the answers to the needy people. And through that experiment, we created lot of data in terms of 30 I would say around 30 million Q&A pairs, around 100 million paragraph vectors, and all those data has gone into the initial training. And we started with LSTMs, and then sequence to sequence, and eventually BERT, and the transformers, and that we were being part of that entire revolution using. Our first experiment was used to be from generating adversarial networks from a generation point of view. And some of the pet statements that we took at that time to solve this problem was um, how how can a computer decipher a statement like can, right? Can, or one morning I shot an elephant in my pajamas. Or these are statements that we can understand as humans, but how can the systems can understand? Long story short, 5 years of R&D and various different experiments to aggregate data and everything, and finally we decided to enter into the enterprise space. And one of the first wins was against IBM for data communication, like you mentioned, Harsha. And that was kind of the story of the 300, like the movie 300, but we survived. That was the only difference, and against some giant, and that gave a huge boost to the entire team in terms of to drive. Yes, it is possible. Yes, it is possible if you have a determined group of individuals collectively thinking through and doing something really good. Yes, it is possible to beat the giants, and it is possible to make a difference in the world. And then we started off from there. And today, we are pretty focused into India, US, as well as Middle East. We have around 60 plus global giants as logos, and we are fast growing as we speak.
Got it. Thank you, Sanjeev. The premise for this webinar itself was we conducted ProdWorks. We conducted an in-person event like 5 weeks back uh, about opportunities in AI for founders. And there was a lot of curiosity around AI agents, AI co-pilots, AI assistants, and people are using these words interchangeably. But there is a difference, right? I would like you to, start from the basics. We would like to know from you, what's the difference? What are AI agents exactly? Why does E42 call your AI agents, the ones which you deploy for your clients, as AI co-workers? So let's start from there.
So, yeah, right. You said, like you said, there is a lot of hype around AI. There's a lot of confusion around AI. There is so many words and lingos being used interchangeably. So now, when you talk about an AI agent, I would say that these are autonomous entities that can sense, learn models of their environment, make decisions, act upon those decisions, and achieve individual and collective goals. So if I define a few characteristics of an AI agent, I would say that it will be reflection, ability to use tools, planning, and collaboration. And it should definitely have a level of autonomy. Basically, these agents operate without human intervention, direct human intervention, and other agents making their own decisions based on their perception of the environment. They have a level of social ability. Basically, these agents should be able to interact with other agents. So it's not just a model, right? It is not just a model that gives you a specific input and a specific output, but these are agents that has a social ability to interact with other agents. It There is a level of reactivity, or the agents can perceive their environment and respond to changes. And there is a proactiveness in terms of they don't just react to scenarios, but they are capable of taking initiatives to fulfill their desired objectives, right? Now, coming back, so this is basically, I would say that a generic definition from an AI agent point of view, and there could be slightly different definitions that you can come across from different dimensions as well. But now, when we look at an AI coworker, I would say that it is a human level abstraction of multiple agents in an enterprise. Like let's say that so far, if you look at an enterprise, what is an enterprise? It's a legal entity. There is employees in the entity. There is products or services or some value creation that is happening by the enterprise. But our view is that along with the human workers within an organization, you will also have AI co-workers, right? So these AI co-workers are multiple agents together coordinating to drive a particular outcome in a particular process or in a particular role. So it is simply a collection of agents for handling a particular role or a particular set of tasks from an end-to-end automation point of view. It's more of a human level personification, because our long-term view is that any enterprise of the future will have the human workers along with AI co-workers, and these human workers and AI co-workers will be coexisting and collaborating together to drive better outcomes. And underlying to the AI co-worker is the AI agents, multiple of these AI agents coordinating to drive that particular outcome.
Got it. Thank you, Sanjeev. And before we proceed to the next question, I'll quickly launch a poll to understand where the audience are. So I would like to understand how far along is your organization in implementing AI agents or co-workers. So this is like for all the audience to answer here. I'll just leave it on the screen for 2 minutes.
Good. Maybe just to add on to something that I was
Yeah.
talking about in terms of on the AI agent. So if you look at the AI agent, so right now suddenly it came into the forefront of our mind share because of the LLMs and the associated activities. But the concept of AI agents probably started in 1970s to 80s, along with the neural information processing system, which was a kind of a precursor to the entire AI collaborative effort across the world. So we had initiatives on the distributed AI systems that is probably came into the 1970s, 1980s, where you needed to break up large monolithic problem into sub problems and multiple agents dealing with that. Then you had the contract net protocols that came in, which basically allowed efficient task distribution as well as negotiation, as well as you had the BDIs that they came in. This is basically the behavior definition and intent from an agent point of view, so that the underlying states and the decision-making process of the agent started getting into a framework kind of a scenario. So this is probably like 80s to 90s to 2000 time frame is this kind of development happen, which is a precursor to the multi-agent approaches and multi-agent systems that we see today.
Or like
So couldn't
interesting,
help
always
couldn't help
always
couldn't
interesting to
help
know.
adding that a bit of history there. Yeah.
Yeah, always interesting to know the history. And I think we are getting in good. I think a lot of people are interested or already started implementing AI agents. I am sure. I think you can see the poll results too, Sanjeev. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
43% are saying that they have started implementing AI agents already, and 14% they are in the early stages, 25% intermediate, and 7% in advanced. Two people they are saying that they are like fully integrated AI agents in their organization. But I think there is a lot of interest around this topic. Uh, Moving on. So for founders and product leaders, a key question when they are implementing AI agents is like, or trying to do and trying to understand is like, uh, how do we, understand the needs, like the when, where, and if an AI agent is actually needed for their organization. So how can leaders find use cases in their organization or identify areas, problems that they can, solve better or more efficiently with AI agents? So how do you identify the needs? Sanjeev? Like, can you?
So I'll break it into two aspects. One is in a let us say that when we are talking about agents in a multi-agent system kind of a framework. Um, so you usually look at it from a point of view of uh, flexibility and scalability, robustness, reliability, self-organization, real-time operations, those kind of areas. And the multi-agent systems are particularly effective for certain types of applications in terms of large complex things. And while in the other scenarios, their use may not be maybe excessive and completely unnecessary. And so that the sweet spot for multi-agent systems applies in the applications that involve complex dynamic interactions, require some kind of a distributed problem-solving mechanism, and benefit from the autonomous, adaptive nature of these multiple agents. Or in some other cases, simpler or more centralized a task may not justify a multi-agent system or the overhead associated with that. So I would say that if you are dealing with any kind of a complex distributed system like smart grids or dynamic environments like real life traffic scenarios to resource allocation and management, like in terms of supply chain management, where you are managing your inventories, to you are managing your a movement of goods to multiple moving pieces, those kind of scenarios, or collaborative robotics, those are rightly fit from a multi-agent framework perspective. In the other scenario where, wherever you are looking at it within an organization, whether you are looking at any kind of an area, whether you have a significant drainage of resources, um, it is consuming quite a lot of your organizational resources. You have issues with user experiences. You have issues with process bottlenecks. So those are some of these areas that you should start looking at from a AI implementation point of view, whether from a single agent point of view, I would say, and then move on to multi-agentic scenarios if you are dealing with much more complex problem that requires some kind of a distributed computing itself.
God, Sanjeev, thank you. And from your diverse clientele, I would like to understand what are the most common use cases for AI coworkers that you have seen? Like, can you share some examples or case studies of how E42's AI coworkers, AI agents have helped your
Sure.
businesses or your clients? You can.
Sure. So let me give you one example that is probably the most recent. So here one of the largest catheter manufacturers in US. Their problem statement was that they were receiving something like 6,000 doctors' notes from various different doctors' offices. Right. So these doctors' notes are typically anywhere from 4 to 5 pages and it can up to 15, 20 pages. And US, it's usually a lot of those things are still electronic faxes or sometimes scan copies that is coming into PDFs and things like that. So you cannot, and somebody, a subject matter expert, had to read through that entire documentation, because you can't even do a control F and search because of the electronic fax or a image PDF because of that. So some experts had to read through that, understand what has the doctor written. It's quite a lot of times it could also be handwritten, and figure out the diagnosis by the doctor, figure out the permanency of the disease and the frequency of the medication required. And after identifying all these parameters from the documentation, they also had to cross-reference against the insurance documentation to figure out what this particular patients what all aspects are going to be covered by the insurance, and prepare accordingly, and have the right products shipped to the patient. Now, this was a extremely manual intensive process, and quite a lot of times we needed to have multiple layers of supervision there to make sure that there is no errors, human-made errors coming into the system. And these are scenarios that is not necessarily automatable in a regular sense with any of the before the advent of AI. I would say that before the AI agents itself, because there's no structural similarity between the two different doctors notes, because it's coming from different areas. So so after this entire automation in terms of the communication aspect automatically handled, to the extraction, abstraction, and synthesis of the information, along with cross-referencing with the insurance documentation, all these parts are done through a multi-agentic system. And the output is basically a note to their shipping sender for shipping the right products to the patient, right? Now, with this in the picture, they were able to automate around 80% of the entire documentation that is coming in per day. Around 6,000 documents coming in, 80% of that completely get automated. Only 20% required supervision. So, and this is one aspect that directly comes into their revenue cycle management. So their benefits were multifold. One, they were able to significantly reduce their overheads of operations, one aspect, because they did not need that many subject matter expertise to do the regular to somewhat trivial task, even though you needed the subject matter expertise there. And the other aspect was that from a revenue cycle point of view, the turnaround time became much faster, so that basically their revenue realization also became much faster. So that's one example that I can give you. Or the other example that I can give you is the telecom major that I talked about earlier, who have been a customer with us for around 5-6 years now, and they generate around 6,000 reports a year. And these are reports, usually the analyst was generating these reports in terms of they look at a company, it generates a SWOT analysis on the company, analyze the financial statements of the company, analyze the 10K filings, the CC filings, and generates a ideal customer profile, and makes the right product fit, and generates an output report. Again, they end up saving around 400 analyst days a month, as per their calculation, while impacting their top line. So and there are other examples, like what we talk about as a AI AP executive doing the end-to-end accounts payable automation end to end. Again, when we talk about using AI agents from that perspective, what happens is that it is not just extraction, abstraction, and synthesis of the emails and the touch points from the vendors and suppliers, extraction of the invoice. It also involves reading through contracts, reading through timesheets, reading through bank statements, and as well as, like, your bank guarantee statements and things like that, and making the right decisions at the right time, and making it ready to pay, so that without a human touch, you are doing that entire process end to end using AI agents there.
Got it. And I'll launch another quick poll to understand, like, if to understand where people would like to see, automation AI agents coming into play. From the audience, we would love to know, like, which area of your business do you think would benefit the most from AI agents? And also, Sanjeev, from your clientele, the diverse part, like, where have you seen it being used the most? Which area? Like, is there something?
Yes. So one of the first movers that we have seen is the finance team, right? Finance department, right? Functional area. And we have been seeing accounts payable, accounts receivable automation, moving really fast from a adoption point of view. And these have been traditionally been done by quite a lot of the RPA solutions with the robotic nature of things, but it has its own downside to it. But from an adoption point of view, I would say that AP executive or the AI coworker that does the end-to-end AP process has been something that we have been seeing in terms of a quick adoption from organizations' point of view. That again immediately comes into their cash flow management and revenue management cycles there. And then the other side that we are seeing is on the HR side as well, where improving the employees interaction with the organization, employees engagement with the organization, and providing them the right support and right cues, and as well as the monitoring their mental, physical, as well as financial health, or helping them to manage that. And from a employee onboarding to retirement, the entire life cycle, we have AI workers involved in that. And that is also another area that we have been seeing where there's a quite a bit of adoption that is happening, and a lot of companies adopt that into that HR space from a AI point of view, because they're also dabbling into AI. They are also trying out different things there, and they kind of see that as a lower risk compared to customer facing. So these are two areas that we see definitely stands out from the rest in terms of customer adoption.
Got it. Thank you, Sanjeev. I think the poll results are also here. I think a lot of people are looking to implement AI in IT operations and customer service, followed
Mhm.
by finance and then sales. Surprisingly, zero have chosen as a HR.
Yeah,
HR
I get
jobs.
that. Yeah, correct. Recruitment and onboarding. Yeah, correct.
So I'll just share the results and then we'll move on to the next question. Sanjeev, now I want to move on to building the AI agents and deploying itself into the roadmap.
Mhm.
So you have given me a brief about like how to identify the use cases, the needs of an AI agent in an organization. Can you give me a brief about how can organization go about the process of building AI agents and co-workers? Like, what are the critical steps involved, which aligns with the organization's goals? So, can you talk along those lines, Sanjeev?
Yeah, sure. So, like I said, in terms of identifying it is, I mean, draining resources and various different aspect, top line, bottom line benefit, those kind of things will the standard set of things. Now, beyond that, when you are looking at it, is that usually every organization looks at from a perspective of they know that AI is the answer. Now, you also have to decide in terms of one, who is going to deploy AI. If your core area is not AI, how are you going to deploy AI? Are you going to hire experts? You will have a problem there because you will not be able to offer the kind of a career path for them. I mean, what do you start with? Do you have the right technology maturity? Now, let us say that what is the area that you start with first? So all these areas are to some extent, if your core business is not AI, it is definitely troublesome for companies to figure that out. So that is where that you look at from multiple aspects. One, in terms of you always choose one specific area, one specific function, or one specific stakeholder around which you are building something. Right, that's one part. So that basically you start small. Second, you have the right tie-up with a company where you are able to, because nobody knows your business like you do. And even if there is a competition who is competing in the exactly in the same space, your processes are different, the way you function is different, your systems are different. So the first thing that you look at is that in terms of what is the first area that you look at from a automation AI adoption point of view? What is the hair on fire problem? Second, what is the small thing that you'll start with? Which particular area, which particular automation that you are looking at, and how do you aggregate the data? What are the different systems that you have? Because you cannot overhaul the systems, because you need to have something that comes and sits on top of that, because you cannot go back and re-engineer stuff within an organization and do a complete process change management and do that, because that usually does not pan out really well, and it does not stop in a short time frame there. So from that perspective, you look at companies and platforms where you can add your subject matter expertise. You can transfer part of your operational knowledge into and the data that you already have in terms of your structured and unstructured data into some kind of AI models, and you should have some kind of a mechanism to transform whatever processes that you already have, that should be able to be taken over by the AI agents without disrupting your existing workforce. So that the idea should be, the moment that an AI agent comes into your workforce, you are immediately the your overheads of that operations, your overheads on your employees goes down, and only the spillovers or only the escalations goes to your existing people. Then you need to start looking at so that is the determination that you need to do initially, in terms of what are the systems, what are the how do you operationalize it with the existing system, with the integrations coming into the picture. And there also, when you are looking at integrations and things like that, it has to be no code. It has to be something that you work with large action models, and you should have a mechanism to train the underlying agents on your existing data without having to have too much of an AI expertise there. Because the moment that you need to have an AI expertise there, a high level of AI expertise there, you need to be able to keep up with the changing field, or keep up with the fast moving, fast changing tech scenarios, rather than focus on your core business itself. So that will be some of the considerations that you need to do when you are starting off into the AI journey. And definitely start small, start on one particular function, one particular very specific small area, get the win there, get the kind of business objectives that you are looking at from that perspective, and grow from there, rather than looking at any kind of a re-engineering there.
Got it. Thank you, Sanjeev. This was clearly helpful. What are you have already touched upon a few of the challenges which people will face when implementing, but what are some of can you go a bit more in depth into that and talk about some of the key technical challenges that people will face, product team will face when implementing AI agents for their organization, when they are deploying AI agents for their enterprises?
So one, to some extent, the maturity itself, right? So one is, let us say that you have some level of maturity within the organization. You have some level of process maturity, things like that. Yes, you are ready for automation. You are ready for AI agents. Now, if your organization or the processes within the organizations are not necessarily mature enough, in which case you will have a little bit of a flux, which eventually will translate it to cost and time of implementation, which could break your trust within the organization, which would break the trust within your employees as well, from an adoption point of view. And then that particular project is doomed for failure, because you will not get enough of a buy-in from within the organization itself, right? So it has to be something small. It has to be something that is phased manner, and containing that. The second part is basically in terms of what are the systems that you have, right? What are the systems that you have? How do you look at that integration? How do you have the workflow orchestration that is happening between the AI agents and the people? That could be the next consideration that comes in, from a data as well as your process orchestration point of view. And the third a third aspect that can come into the picture is in terms of how do you evangelize it within the organization itself, right? So that's basically goes beyond the technology itself.
Mm.
But I mean, technology does solve some problems, but until and unless you have all the stakeholders aligned towards that objective, again you are going to definitely going to have a problem. So there from a technology underlying point of view, what you are looking at is that what is the specific problem that you are trying to solve, right? In terms of is it a data processing problem? Is it a extraction, abstraction, and synthesis problem that you are looking at? What is the kind of models that you need to do that? So again, like some kind of a platform approach and a tie-up there definitely helps you, because you will end up getting the complete toolkit, and you should have a mechanism to mechanism to kind of codify your subject matter expertise itself through that kind of an approach there.
So, as you said, a platform approach is the better path than rather than build. Is a platform approach better path rather than building it from scratch, or who should choose a platform approach and who should choose a?
See, if you are like again, if your core business is AI, or
Mm. Yeah.
if your entire business plan is contingent upon a specific tool that you need, a tech-driven thing, then you should probably look at building it yourself, because you are building an intellectual property there, right? You are building it an intellectual property there, and it is going to be core to your business. You need to have the right team. You need to have the you need to keep evolving your solution, which is core to your business. Now, anytime, let us say that you are in manufacturing, or you are into some other area where AI is not necessarily the core, or what you are looking at is not necessarily the core driver for the organization, but it is going to help significantly with your top line or bottom line. You should look for a partnership, kind of partnership through some kind of a platform approach, because one, it is not you are not going to get limited by a single point solution, because you create a single point solution, single point impact within your organization. Now tomorrow, that is your baseline. How do you scale from there? Because you need to keep scaling from that point of view, and it is not your core business as well. But if it is your core business is connected with AI, if your core business is something that can get valued directly from an AI point of view, then you should do it yourself. You should have the team, because that is where you are driving at. That is your value proposition into the market itself. Until and unless that is not your value proposition, you should always look at from a platform approach point of view, because that will give you better sustainability and scalability compared to having your own team there.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Like, thanks for reiterating the point there. How do you select the right platform? Like, why should someone pick an E42, or why? How do they?
One way to look at from a technology point of view, see, today's best of the algorithms, today's best of the models that you have is tomorrow's open source, right? Or tomorrow's, I mean, it's yesterday's story tomorrow in a
Hmm.
way, right? So it's a fast changing field, right? Now, what you need to look at is that one, are you able to get the entire value chain? Because from a business point of view, it is not necessarily the business value comes in at the application layer, right? So you have the underlying framework. You have the, let us say that in the AI stack point of view, you have your underlying hardware, GPUs, training, inferring, the hardware components. You have the cloud abstraction on top of that, and on top of that, your toolkit, whatever toolkit that you are using train your AI to configure things and connect with your other systems and everything. But the actual value comes in the application layer, which is the amalgamation of all these things together. And how do you configure all these things? And that's where the business value comes in, where you are looking at an ROI from a top line, bottom line, user experience point of view. Any of those aspects gets derived at the business layer. Now, when you are looking at that way, say, let us say that what happens tomorrow when you have some additional data that is coming in. You want to scale your operations. You want to consume much more data. You want to add additional data pipelines. Let us say that there are some better algorithms that came up. Can you onboard that very easily? So one of the key things that you need to look at is that even when you are looking at a platform approach point of view, is it flexible enough to adapt to changing needs? One, is it flexible enough to adapt to newer innovations that is happening in the space, whether it is through new data pipelines, whether it's things like LLM ops, ML ops, whether new algorithms, new models that's coming in. Tomorrow, let's say that you want to add some models yourself or through some other partnership. You have some other development that is happening. Are you able to add on to that? At the end of the day, are you able to retain some of these AI learnings for your own benefit
Hmm.
and drive some intelligence out of it, rather than the model itself is a larger model in the cloud and you don't necessarily have access to the learnings that is coming out of that model? So these will be some of the considerations that you need to look at from that perspective.
Got it. Thanks, Sanjeev. And moving on to data. So I want you to explain the role of data quality for training effective AI agents, and how can companies ensure that they have access to high quality data sets?
So any company, if you look at, you have to be one of my favorite advice to organizations is that you have to be very skeptical when you are using historical data, right? So a lot of companies say that, like, hey, I have 10 years of data. Can you train your AI engine with that and, like, drive some outcomes? Yeah, yes and no, right? Because the historical data itself, a lot of times it is extremely skewed, right? So just as an example, like, when we are creating some kind of a recruiting agents, we will not use some of the historical features that is there in the data in terms of gender, because it's going to be biased, it is going to be skewed, right? So you definitely need data is very important. You definitely need very clean, very good balanced data. It should You should ensure that the data represents the a fair representation of the stakeholders. It's already there, or the fair representation of the type of outcomes that you are driving at. It is already there as part of the data that you are using from a training point of view. So that usually starts at the data gathering stage itself, where you need to ensure that you have a team that is gathering the good data. You need to probably go through that pain itself, and whether internal or external, there has to be some level of supervision there, and you need to have some kind of a cross-functional governance group to manage that entire aspect to for the effective uh, collection and training on the data itself and the cleanup of the data as well. So it's very, 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 very important, because again, whatever skews that comes in, a lot of times it may not be evident in the first set itself. It comes much later on, and a lot of times accidentally as well, right?
Got it. I would like to talk about integration and user adoption as well. Uh, uh, but before we move on that, I think one question which I think Srinath has put up: what are the hidden or to be often tracked costs in AI agent building and maintenance? I think he has asked in terms of infrastructure security, data LLM usage, application costs, API costs.
Again, I mean, there are multiple models there, right? That depends upon your strategy. One is, let's say that if you are using external APIs, um, like OpenAI to any of those things. I mean, of course, it's a metered model, so you pay per token, definitely, and that pricing has been because companies have invested upwards of $15 billion into Microsoft OpenAI to various different people. Uh, there is some kind of a price war that is going on in terms of from a API cost perspective. So that's basically any of those scenarios. You have to have a very clear understanding in terms of what are the APIs, how many APIs will be called to complete. Let's say that, just for the sake of simplicity, let's say to complete one transaction, how many API calls, how many tokens, or how many pages, all those things comes into the consideration from a cost perspective. Now, the other side is, let us say that you are using some open source model or a platform like ours. In terms of that cost consideration comes in terms of how busy the system is, in terms of what is going to be your inference cost, right? So that there are various different mechanisms that you can use in terms of, let's say that if I take the example of LLMs, you can use your low order ranking adapters, you can use quantization techniques to do that. So to optimize the model size, optimize the size and the inference cost, reduce the inference cost, you will have to use those kind of scenarios definitely. And also you also need to look at in terms of some of those things when we are creating that. You probably don't need a GPU itself from a LLM point of view, from a pure play generation point of view. You need that, but is it possible to run your inference in the CPU itself? That could be another consideration. So that you need to tackle these various cost head versus latency versus performance. That's a trade-off that you'll have to do when you are looking at from that perspective.
Got Sanjeev. And talking from an integration perspective, so there are questions about will I lose my job if I have if my organization implements AI agents? And so how do we human AI conflicts? I have to say. So what strategies can companies use to drive user adoption among their employees and may ensure that they are comfortable working alongside AI coworkers or comfortable with AI agents and
Yeah. So I mean, see, at the end of the day, it's inevitable, right? It is inevitable in terms of, I mean, just the way we should look at it is empowering us, right? It helps with our productivity. It empowers us. Yes, it is in the short term there is going to be a problem because all of the entire human race has to work from 8 hours to 12 hours to 18 hours, depending upon what job you are doing, where you are working, what kind of profession that you follow. And a lot of times they don't wake up thinking that excited about the job itself, right? So AI will come in and automate a lot of those things. So that way, in the industrialization time or with the advent of electricity, how it transformed industries, transformed our lives itself. AI has that kind of a transformative power, right? And the only way to tackle that is from an organization point of view. One, you need to evangelize. You need to make sure that the employees are not threatened by AI. The best way to do that is basically to look at from a if there's going to be a job replacement or those kind of scenarios coming into the organization, you should have programs to evangelize among the people, upskill the people to better value add into that organization, right? So a lot of times, like the jobs that is going in terms of, there is always an opportunity where you can upskill the group of people to provide better outcomes for the organization along with AI. So the organization should position the AI agents among the human workforce as a beneficial thing that transforms and helps them, um, rather than an antagonistic role, you know, and help those group of people who may potentially get displaced to upskill and reskill to provide better value into the organization. Not from an organization point of view, it is better value for them as well.
got it. So we have talked about data, we have talked about cost, now we have talked about the human AI angle. What are the other ways where companies can ensure that the AI agents are, like well integrated within their organization?
One is like I said, in terms of whenever you are getting an AI agent into an organization, you are definitely looking at the AI agent sitting on top of things so that you don't need any kind of a re-engineering there,
Mm.
right? Now, so and you definitely need to adapt no code integration, API gateways, large action models there, so that it coexists on top of your existing systems and processes and immediately adds value to you, right? Value to you as well as rest of your employees. You need to evangelize it across multiple levels so that basically people are not threatened by the job. So that one is on the integration into your existing systems and existing processes without disturbing them or without re-engineering. The other is basically integrating with your human workforce because it's a transformational. Because you need to ensure that people also adopt to that. People also let us say that why would you want an employee to work 10 hours
Mm.
if AI can provide some effort into that entire ecosystem and that person can reduce the work to around 6 hours, you know. So that should be the kind of an integration that you are looking at with systems as well as people, including the AI agents into the workforce.
Got it. And thinking along those lines, what should be the ideal success metric for AI agent implementation? Like time reduced for employees to complete a task. Like, what do you think should be the ideal success metric? How?
Depending upon the problem that you're looking at solving, one, it could be ROI, right? It could be return on investment in terms of your benefit, a very measurable benefit in your bottom line. So, like I talked about one of the case
Mm.
studies where there was a significant impact where uh, that company was saving around 100,000 plus dollars a month through the ROI calculation itself and post deployment. That's the kind of a benefit that they saw. So one is in terms of if you are looking at is it going to give you a clear ROI? What are the metrics to look at from an ROI perspective? What is the savings from a bottom? Let's say, for example, you do an automation. You do one of my favorite example is that you do an automation where you do say you process 100 documents, but most of the document is done even, but still all the 100 documents require some level of human supervision. You don't get a benefit out of that. But let's say that you do automation and then you get a 80% benefit in terms of straight through processing. That means that only 20 documents needs to be dealt with by people. There's a significant benefit there. So you need to have a clear metric in terms of how do you calculate the ROI, whether it's a bottom line benefit that you are looking at. Second, in terms of, let us say that you are doing some kind of a AI agent to impact your top line. What is going to be the measure, which is even going to be a little bit more difficult, but at least it can be measured in terms of the maybe the conversations converted, maybe the meeting schedule, those kind of an aspect. The third aspect could be how was the user experience got transformed, whether it's a turnaround time for a customer complaint, whether it is a whether it is a whether it's a employees engagement with an organization, any of those aspects in terms of transformation of the user experience. Is there a shrinkage in your from a revenue cycle point of view? How do you measure that? Or in one of the cases, for example, I was really surprised that one of the companies was doing the automation there with our platform, where we did not in any kind of a standard metric, we didn't see a benefit in terms of financial benefit to the organization. But the CIO's pitch to me was that it just simplifies, gives a better life to the employees because their life becomes a little bit more simpler. on a day-to-day basis. That was good enough for them, you know. So they are so it has to be something that is looked at from what specific AI agent are you deploying, what is going to be the impact, and then that measurable thing from a metric point of view, or top line, bottom line, to experience, to just a just a better life for your employees, you know.
I think that should be the best starting point. Everything else follows, I believe.
Absolutely, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Uh,
I mean, at the end of the day, what is the use of technology if it cannot make people's life a bit more better, you know?
exactly. So, moving on to the last part of the segment, the future of AI agents or AI in organizations. Like, how do you see AI agents evolving in the next 5 years, 10 years? We are still very early in the game, but I would like to see how AI agents would evolve in the next 5 years, 10 years, and how organizations' adoption of AI agents would evolve. Can you shed light on these trends, and also Cohere and LangChain and the multi agents and all these things are we keep hearing about them everywhere.
Correct. I mean, of course, I mean, Cohere, Lang graphs to Crew.ai to, AutoGen to all these things will keep evolving. Will keep evolving. All these frameworks will keep evolving from a multi-agent point of view because, like, there are multi-agent framework that handles at a very low level, where you get much more control over that. So there will be one set of development that is happening there where we are end up using that for more critical work, more critical impactful areas where you need much more control over that, to a bit more higher level frameworks where, like, it's much easier to create, but at the same time you will probably lack a bit of a control there, right? Now, unfortunately, the space is such a way that nobody can do any kind of a long-term prediction, to be really honest there, right? Because it captured the imagination of everybody, but and there are so much of an effort that is going in. There's so much of cross-functional, cross-technology areas that is happening. You are using AI to figure out how our brain neurons work in one way. On the other way, we are trying to simulate how our brain neurons work into AI. So it happens back and forth. But in the near term, I would say that the AI agents coding, AI agents creating its own environment to run the code, execute the code, and drive that outcome completely autonomously is probably something that we see in the near term. You'll also start seeing mix of experts there in terms of just like the language models, like a mix of expert or mix of expert agents, a kind of a framework that can come in and, like, better drive better outcomes there. Um, yeah, I mean, otherwise, the area is
Yeah.
open for innovation, continue to evolve there, you know.
What do you think
So
organizations?
one of the things that we work on to some extent is a concept called a real world entity, right? In terms of, if you look at with all the advantages or all the AI, everything that is coming in, there is still a problem where when you talk about the real intelligence, we as humans, we are able to learn something and understand that and use that in a completely different context and environment, right? Where still the AI is not really. It's definitely getting there, but there are. I would say that it's still like a little baby from that perspective compared to an adult, right? So that's one area that we definitely see a huge difference. We are also thinking about, like, some other concepts like a real world entity, right? Real world entity is kind of a thing where, let's say that, like, um, the moment that I say something about an apartment or something about something that is real, an object, there are so many relationships, so many connotations, so many commonsensical relationships and knowledge that we immediately pops up in our head, and we ourselves does not know where it is coming from. right? Now, a lot of those relationships and everything is derived from we can derive through a large language model, but application of that in a completely different scenario is still difficult. So that could be some of the areas where the core AI itself evolves into to I would say that uh, more human-like, albeit our evolutionary biases, I would say.
But it was an interesting discussion. I learned a lot personally from our conversation. And is there anything else that you would like to share? Anything else which you think that enterprises today should be aware of?
I would like to share an excitement actually rather
Yes.
in terms of see we are all in a very unique space and time, right, where we have this unique opportunity to see a synthetic intelligence coming to coming to life in a way, a non-DNA based intelligence, non-DNA based propagation of information as well as intelligence, and that's an awesome time to be in. And from an organizational point of view, organization will have to be very nimble, right? Very nimble. They should be ready to adapt to changes fast enough because gone are the ways of doing businesses or even our lives as well, right? In terms of like, oh, you finish your degree in a particular area and like, for the next 20, 30 years, you are sorted, and all those timelines have shrunk with the advent of, especially with AI. Now you will see that kind of a transformation that you used to see in 20, 30 years, you will see that in a few years' time. So the organization will have to be nimble. They should be completely open to the idea of the AI workers coexisting with human and do the necessary steps there. Because at the end of the day, it is not AI that is going to be a threat. Your threat is your competition is going to be companies and people using AI if you are not using AI. you know so that is where the existential crisis comes in, where companies and people using AI will end up replacing people and companies not using AI. That's the hard reality of the world, so we should be prepared for that.
You said it perfectly. I think it's time to open up the floor for questions from the audience.
Yeah, so Harsha, I'm Rachit. Uh, Hello,
Yes, sir.
Harsha.
Please
Ah,
go ahead. We can hear you.
Sanjeev, quick question. See, all these hospitals, no, they have chatbots, which are
Hmm.
supposedly, have artificial intelligence built into them. Now, but if you use them, they are very basic. So if I'm having a heart attack and I punch in my details saying tiredness, sweat, feeling low, etc., it will say, can I book an appointment day after tomorrow? What is your contact number? Do you think, because it should trigger an emergency effectively? So do you
Hmm.
think, how is there any model we can build to make these chatbots a little more efficient, effective, or I can go a little extreme. Somebody could be having a suicidal thought. You know,
Hmm.
how do we, it should be able to see the eyes. Eyes are reddish or yellowish.
No, definitely. It is something you can definitely build in today's. See, if you look at 2019 time onward, the chatbots started becoming popular. So most of the chatbots, if you look at and the early stage chatbots, most of them were pretty much a HTML click through, I would say, initially. And then later on, you had the intent classification, you had the kind of a decision tree that came in, where what the patient says, and it cannot identify multiple intents there. It cannot identify negation there. It is like one of those chatbots that I think Indigo or some airline, right? So hey, thank one passenger commented like, thank you for sending me to Delhi and my baggage to Bangalore.
Correct.
Thanks a lot to Indigo. And the chatbot said that like, thank you. We are always at your service. So
Correct.
so it is again a problem of understanding natural language itself very clearly, right?
Correct.
Now I mean that situation hasn't 100% gone away, but it has become quite a lot better because we are able to we are able to identify and generate almost like human. I mean, generate much better than human a lot of times. And then in terms of identification also it became much better. But there's still a problem where the context length goes up, all those things. I mean, you still have some challenges there. But yeah, so today, I mean, you will be able to create much better system using the generative AI, using LLMs as well as multimodal networks that can actually
Can you
recognize
do
your
it?
features
Can
to.
you
uh,
do it? Can you do it?
uh,
Then we can
we
talk.
don't do no, we don't. We can take the conversation offline, but we don't do the facial identification based on that. What you mentioned in terms of eyes are red and whether the person looks depressing or any of those things. But we work with some partners because our initiative is again some of these areas we work with niche areas that we work with. We work with partners who have a subject matter expertise. We provide the underlying framework. We provide some of the R&D services, and we co-build with the partner. So we have some partners who are working in that area, but we ourselves does not have the capability there.
Thanks. Thanks.
But we can definitely take that conversation offline, and I
Sure,
may be
sure.
able to connect
हाँ,
you with the right people.
I will get your contact. We'll probably
Sure.
converse.
Yes. Thanks, Sanjeev. Does anybody else have any questions? You can unmute yourself and ask Sanjeev.
Hello. Hey, Harsha. Hey, Sanjeev.
Hi,
Yes,
Suhail.
well.
Yes. Actually, we have a question to Sanjeev. So, see, when building an agent, right, using an open source model and fine tuning, and the resource is very intensive. Okay.
Mhm.
So, my question is like, how requiring the significant data time sequentially, right? The cost is very high. Okay.
Mhm.
And the RAG model, right? RAG model
Mhm.
and prompt caching can help the cost. It can reduce cost and save time. But in
Absolutely.
case of uh, like if you take the case of fine tuning, right?
Mhm.
Which should we use? Like either we should use RAG model or prompt caching because it's a very technical question, but because this is what we are working on currently, so which might help us if you could help us with this.
Absolutely. So again, what you are probably looking at is that depending upon the application, because
Okay.
lot of times you are really good with RAG-based approaches, right? So like you rightly said, from a RAG-based approaches point of view, your cost as well, inference cost, training cost, everything significantly goes down. So,
Hmm.
and depending upon the data, you will be able to do that. And most of the time, we'll not need a fine tuning there because the fine tuning, as you know, it will be very, very, very expensive. And a lot of times, depending
Hmm.
upon the data, depending upon this thing, fine tuning may not give you better results. Actually, your results could get worse there, right?
Okay.
And so it could be a I would say that if you are looking at any kind of a use case that requires generation, so typically you will have some kind of a rack-based generation that is happening there.
Hmm.
And now and a lot of times the smaller models in terms of even though large parameter models perform much better from a generation point of view, but if you look at today's world, a lot of these models right now, for example, Microsoft came up with the
Hmm.
3.5 or something, and that performs fantastically well. So you can always look at the models to smaller models, quantized LoRa models to reduce your cost there from a inference perspective.
So, for just a follow-up question,
Mhm.
so which you typically suggest? Because as you said, fine tuning is costlier, right? So,
Yeah, correct.
and what's the advantage and disadvantage like for between RAG and prompt caching? So like from your perspective, with this one end.
See, I can talk. I mean, I can see there are both scenarios that happens. One in terms of let us say that if you are looking at a prompt-based mechanism, you are probably a lot of times you are also probably more prone to hallucinations, right?
Okay.
So if you are looking at very fixed critical applications, you will probably better off going with the RAG-based model
Okay.
than the prompt-based approaches, because prompt-based approaches definitely, like, you will just think about an extraction problem itself, right? Now,
Mhm.
let's say that you give a document, you ask the model to extract, and, like, sometimes, like, it'll actually generate what you are very close to what you are expecting, and it'll be very difficult for you to figure that out also,
Okay.
you know.
Mhm.
So there, in those kind of scenarios, RAG-based approaches, and again, if you have smaller data segments, that will definitely work better. Use a vector store like a Chroma DB or something, and then do a RAG-based approaches. Either do a self-RAG or if you have the room to look at that from even a knowledge graph-based RAG mechanism also
Okay.
will work pretty well there.
Cool. Thanks a lot, for clearing it out. Thanks, Sarsha.
Yeah. Thanks for the questions, Rahil. So, Sanjeev, you are not on LinkedIn, and how can people reach you? How can people, like ask you questions?
Yeah, I can drop a line here with my email address. I mean, again, I mean, I've never been part of any of
Yeah, social
the
media.
online social media. Yeah, and actually, it saves a lot of my time actually. So
You're giving your marketing team a very tough time,
yeah,
not being on LinkedIn.
every time I have a conversation with them, they keep picking on me, man. So they keep picking on me. So for the LinkedIn account or social media presence. So yeah, I mean, my email address is sanjeev@e42.ai. Please do feel free to drop a line, and yeah, definitely we can interact later on
So the
as well.
only few leaders who I know who's not on LinkedIn while everybody comes. But as I said, I'll get your email ID. I'll mail it back to the attendees. And it was a
Sure, sure.
wonderful session. Personally, I learned a lot. I learned a lot from asking you questions, also from the questions which we got from the audience. It was really good. I think everybody benefited from this session. Yeah. Thank you
And
so much, Sanjay.
thank you so much. Thank you for having me here for this wonderful opportunity. It was engaging and fun. A lot of fun, yeah.